We're live.
Hello, and welcome to the Content with Clout Google Hangout. My name is Susan Crossman, and I am hosting this program with my friend and colleague, Tom Gray.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom. Content with Clout aims to demystify the world of online marketing so you can get your message out, increase web engagement, and ultimately make more money with your online content. You can find out more about us at contentwithclout.com, and you can get in touch with Tom or I at tom@contentwithclout.com or susan@contentwithclout.com. Today we are very pleased to welcome our interview guest, Chad Bowe. He is a two-time entrepreneur and the owner of several marketing and development-focused websites. Chad holds an MBA in marketing and has well over a decade of Canadian and international digital marketing, consulting, and business development experience. If asked, Chad would describe himself as a holistic content and digital marketing strategist. You can find out more about Chad at www.thegtaconsultant.com. And you can send him an email at info@gtaconsultant.com. So, Chad, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you here. Can I lead off with the first question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Chad, we have a lot of people here who are on a bit of a learning curve often with their content marketing and so on, and we're just wondering, do people really absolutely have to have a social media presence? Is that really important today?
You know, I think it is. It's almost become one of those necessary evils that a lot of people, they don't want to spend time on social media. They don't want to have to think about making posts or advertising on Facebook or LinkedIn. But it's really gotten to the point where if you're not there, it looks like you haven't crossed your T's and dotted your I's. I mean, at the very least, that's what it looks like. It's like if you go back, say, 10 years ago and you don't have an email address. I don't know if you remember what that was like, but it's to that point. So yeah, you do want to have some level of presence via social media, right?
Yeah, I remember. I go back even further, Chad. I remember if you didn't have a fax machine or a fax number.
Yeah.
Then before that, the telex.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And,
I don't remember the telex, but I remember the fax.
Yeah.
Gee, what's a fax machine?
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't have a fax. I'll tell you, I have no fax. I've not used a fax in 5 years.
I know. I'm always baffled when somebody asks me, because every now and then somebody says, "Could you fax that to me?" And I don't know what to do. So, anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think, Chad, one thing that you mentioned in your answer, and by the way, just a comment on how you describe yourself. I like that idea of holistic. I think that that's so critical that as we approach marketing ourselves, our businesses, and so forth, that we do kind of take a holistic point of view. So anyway, kind of a follow-up on your first question, one of the things that you said about the kind of necessary evil is time, and I think that that's the big issue I see with a lot of people that I work with is they don't have the time, and maybe what they're really saying is they don't see the value of spending their time. So if we could approach that first and say, when you say you need to invest time in this, typically how much time are we talking about for the average small or mid-sized kind of business customer?
That's a question I get a lot. Everyone, they say, well, should I make 5 posts per week? Should I make 10? Should I make 1? And that's really a huge and very complex question because it's different for everyone, right? I believe in this concept of minimum effective dose. You need to figure out what's going to work for you in terms of what's the least you can do and still get a really good return, because you also run into an issue with having too much content out there, right? The rule of scarcity. say you were to make 100 posts per day, I mean, that's going to really upset your audience. The value is gone at that point. It's actually hurting you to do that. Because then there's also things like opportunity costs, like what you could be doing in that time when you're making those, let's call them superfluous posts, right? Those 99 that you didn't need to make that day. So it's very hard to answer. I know what I do. I try to make one really good post per week. That's what I personally try to do. So it's not fluff. It's actually hopefully value laden, and that seems to work pretty well. Someone else may make up. It's depending on what it is you're selling or offering, what business you're in, how big your audience is, how segmented it is. So it's a very it's a huge question. It's not one that has an easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
There's Abraham. I don't know why it made me think of this, but Abraham Lincoln was asked one time, how long should your legs be? And he was a tall, lanky character, and I don't know where the question came from, but the question was, how long should your legs be? And Abraham Lincoln looked at the questioner and said, well, long enough to reach the ground. So I think that equates to your answer in that you spend as much time as you need to be effective. And there is kind of a point of diminishing returns after which your effectiveness decreases. So it seems to me that would also speak to the necessity to be able to kind of have good measurement in place to understand when you're being effective and when you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for flexibility, isn't there, in terms of, if it's working, then what you're doing is, if you're getting results, if you're getting, inquiries and leads and so on, then obviously it's working. If you're not getting any response at all, then there's room for some fine tuning, I guess, right? So
I'll tell you another thing. Recently, I wrote this is something I actually posted on Facebook recently. There's an article that basically said, stop trying to promote engagement on social media, right? Because you're probably not going to get it. You're not going to get a lot of engagement. I don't know of any small business that's really getting a lot of engagement, right? So if you focus on that, you're going to spend a lot of time and you're not going to get a lot of results. And I think as time goes on, and social media obviously will continue to be there, I think people are going to realize, the main thing you want to do on social media is build your brand awareness and your authority, right? So you want to be seen as authoritative on whatever it is you're doing, not so much trying to get people to communicate with you, or have these these long drawn out conversations on Facebook or anything else, because that's unlikely to happen. Right, that really and truly is. Some people do get it, and that's great, but you can spend a lot of time trying to make that happen. And I think that your time on social media is much, it's more well spent just trying to build your brand, just to let people know, hey, I'm here and I'm an authority on whatever it is I'm doing. And then later on, that's going to translate into business, because they see you as the go-to person, right? So it's kind of a change in focus versus let's get a conversation going to let's just present myself as an authority in my field.
So how does a blog fit into all of that, Chad? Are you a proponent of blogging? I'm hearing from a few people these days that don't, that aren't doing a lot of blogging, and they're not feeling that it's time well spent. How does that fit into your concept?
Blogging is, I personally do like blogging. I like to blog and then use that as content for social media. So social media in a way is more or less just a means of distribution, right, for content in in a blog. I personally do it a little differently. I create pages, so it's evergreen. It has a little bit of a different feel to it. Whereas a post is more transient when you think of a post versus a page, right? So blogging can be a fantastic tool. It can build your business. there's a lot that goes into it. And the main thing is you have to make sure that you're blogging about something that your audience cares about, right? Because no one has time to read anything these days, right? And if you're not putting out content that is immediately valuable and relevant, yeah, blogging can be a big waste of time too. So and another thing, another huge deciding factor, I guess, in if your blogging efforts would be successful, is if you like to blog. I spoke to a client recently, and the question came up, and it comes up all the time. Oh, I want to start a blog. And I said, well, do you like to write, or do you like to create videos, or is that something that you like to do? Because if you don't like to do it, it's going to be extremely difficult to fit something you don't like to do into your daily schedule, because small business owners are very, very busy, right? And blogging takes time. It can take, especially if you're not accustomed to sitting down and writing, it can take you hours and hours to make a decent blog post that anyone's going to care about, right? And if you do that 10 times in a row and you get no results, then you're going to stop. But you've got to be interested in it, and you've got to enjoy it, and you've got to know what to write about.
Do you think, Chad, that if you are that person who doesn't particularly care to write, do you advocate that perhaps they assign that to somebody else, either within the organization? I know a lot of companies kind of pass it over to whatever marketing department or group they have, or if they're large enough, they have a social media group, or to outsource it to one of these many services that will be happy to generate words for you if you for fee and so forth. Or do you go the other way and say, if you can't produce it, then it's not, because it's a matter of voice, and if it's not your voice, then it's not authentic. How do you come down on that?
I do like the authentic do-it-yourself approach, but as a company gets larger, things change anyway, right? So it's no longer just the owner's voice that's being heard in the market. So you could potentially hand it off to someone else, say in marketing or PR or whatever else, and it can work fine, right? There's different degrees of success as well, right? You can ride a horse, or you can ride a cow, or you can ride a Lamborghini, right? You can do different things. You're going to get different levels of success with it, but they're all sort of moving you somewhere, right? So I'd say if you can blog at all, and you are able to figure out what it is your audience wants to know, and you're seeing that it's being read and whatnot, then sure, any of those things. I would say worst case is to outsource it totally, because then you're very far away from yourself or your business, and then you're sort of relying on someone that doesn't know your business nearly as well as you do, or someone within your business would. And things can get sort of canned at that point, right? You lose the authenticity and everything else. So it can work, and there are people that do it, and they do it fairly well. But I would say that's a last resort, sort of.
Yeah. Well, which is a good segue into the next question is, if you are writing a blog, then what do you recommend your clients? What should they write about? What should they share via blog or via other social channels?
That question really pulls up the importance of knowing your audience, right? Because if you really, really know your audience and you're really connected to them, you're gonna have a fairly good idea about what to write about. Right? If you're selling, say you're a plumbing store, and you know that at a certain time of the year people are I don't know, fixing their sinks or whatever, hey, that's a good time to maybe put together a tutorial on fixing sinks, right? It's not the best example, but it's going to be relevant, and it's timely, and people would actually care to read it. Like right now, you'll see there's a lot of content out there, because it's springtime, and there's a lot of home improvement content out there right now, and that's very timely. Now, if you were to put out that home improvement content here in Canada in, say, December or January, I can guarantee you're not going to get as much engagement, or people aren't going to care about it as much, because it's kind of, it's not what your audience wants to see, right? So there are quite a few factors that go into it, but the biggest thing is just understanding where your audience is at, what their needs are, what their wants are at that particular time, and then producing what they want to see.
Chad, where does SEO fit into all of this? So you've got
SEO
your blog,
is,
you're motoring along with your blog, and so how do we relate that to search engine optimization?
everything that we do online, it needs to be optimized, right? Everything, any bit of content, if you make a video, if you put out text content, images, anything, it's got to be optimized in order for it to be found, right? And optimization has really come down to, first of all, having great content, and is moving more and more towards that. Before, it used to be, let's put some keywords in here, and let's repeat it 10 times, and let's trick the search engines. Google especially has gotten very smart, right? They've got an incredible algorithm that they change all the time, and it looks for quality, right? So the first thing is you need a solid, whatever it might be. Say it's an article. You need something that's not 5 sentences long, but it's a good chunk of content. They've found that articles that are more wordy, and everyone will speak against this, because I know my clients are like, oh, I don't want to put that on my website because it's too long. No one's going to read it. It doesn't really matter, right? Because the search engines are going to find it and they're going to present it. And if you don't, if you don't please Uncle Google, you're not going to be, the content's not going to be found anyway. You'll have to rely on your Facebook page and whatever, and boosting your posts, and spending money to get it out there. But if you want it to be found organically, everything you do must be optimized. And the first step, once again, is quality content. And then you do want to have things like word optimized titles. The page file, if it's a page, should be optimized with keywords. Once you guys go back to the plumbing example, if you're writing about fixing sinks, then you've got to have fixing sinks as a keyword, fairly prominently throughout that article. You don't repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, but the title of your article might be how to fix a sink, right? Because that's very specific. And that's what someone's going to be searching for. They're going to go online, they're going to be like, okay, my sink is broken, how do I fix it? And Google's going to look at what you wrote and say, okay, well, this seems like a good match for, for what this person is searching for. So you've got to have good content, you've got to have optimized titles, your images, you want to make sure you have alt tags in there. Alt tags are basically a way of tagging your images in case they don't come up. From time to time you go to a website and the image doesn't come up. You want to have something in there. The alt tag will give a bit of text that says what the image should have been. And Google looks for all of these things, right? So optimization is very important, and also another reason why is because everything that you put out is sort of in competition with thousands and thousands of other people's content, right? The internet is worldwide. It is local to an extent, but anything you put out is not just, your article is not going to be that unique, so it's going to go up against other people's content. And Google's going to say, well, I think this, this bit of content here is more authoritative, this bit of content is more optimized than the other, and that's going to help that one to be served. I hope that makes sense. I don't know.
A note on the images, aside from if the images don't appear, by optimizing the images, then that gives you another opportunity to show up in search results. I've got a client who's built aircraft hangars, and we have several great images of aircraft hangars that they're building or under construction or have been built and so forth. They're all optimized, and when you do a search on that, Google, with their whole kind of universal search approach, are going to they'll show videos related to that, they'll show images related to that, as well as pointing to websites and so forth.
Right.
But when I search on that, the nice thing about it, or what's gratifying, is that his images will actually often show up ahead of his listing. So there will be an image and it's because we've taken the time to optimize it, and you do that as Chad said, through the alt image tag, and it should be relevant and related to the image and then to the content that supports the image. But apart from that, you can also gain search engine traffic. Another signal that's into the search engine.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The file name is super important for images, even more so, I would say, than the alt tag. Basically, you name your image. You don't name it 3462 dot .jpg or something. You name it,
the name that comes out of the camera, right?
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people just pop up an image and they stick an alt.
Yeah.
In there and think it's going to do well. It doesn't really. You name it what it is. So that would be, aircraft hangar in Toronto or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is all very, very technical, though, fellas. And
I know it's getting technical.
Like but as an entrepreneur, as a business person running a business, what do people actually have to know about SEO? Like, is there a bare minimum? That people absolutely have to know about, and how would they go about getting that information? How can they learn that?
There are tons of resources online. There are tons and tons of articles online. I think I shared one. I did share one recently. I didn't write it, but I found it and I thought it was pretty good. That will tell you that these are the things that you need to do. And it's probably out of the scope of what we're talking about here, because it does get a little technical. But if you say you didn't want to go and Google and find that, I would say just make sure that you use appropriately titled content, right? So if you're using WordPress and you're blogging or something, and there's that area where you put in the title, just make sure that talks about what your article talks about, and then make sure that your article is really well written. It's fairly wordy. If you can put an image or two in there, that's great. If you can put a video in there, that's fantastic. But just make sure to have everything well labeled, right? That's probably the minimum.
Yeah.
And labeled with the key, as you said earlier, Chad, with the keywords and terms that have been found to be important to the people who are looking for the services you offer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, go ahead.
So, given the technical nature of SEO, I mean, there is a minimum that you should know as the owner. But is this one of those things that on your website that you should leave to the experts? And if so, how do you approach finding the right resource?
That's a great question, because I have offered my clients SEO services in the past, and I have pulled clients away from companies that were providing, let's call it fake services, right, for lack of a better term there. There's a lot, because it is technical, it can get technical. A lot of companies, they charge you for things that they really don't need to charge you to do, or they don't even do, right? I had a client recently, it took a while to get her to actually, to move away from this supposed SEO company, right? And there's a lot of trickery going on. I'm going to be honest and tell you that. So just be very careful if you do decide to seek to an SEO provider, service provider. I would say almost, probably the best thing to do is get an audit, right? And they're going to look at if they know what they're doing, they're going to look at your content and they're going to say, okay, well, these are the things that you need to improve on, and then you're going to be able to take that, and when you create new content, kind of just follow along with that. So it's going to be more of a learning exercise versus one of these, okay, let's sign up every month and pay $500 month after month for SEO services, right?
Mhm.
That's where things get shady when you're paying month after month, right? Because most things, after you cross your T's and dot your I's on the site itself, it's just all content,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So,
and I found that a lot of the companies that are kind of the worst offenders used to be, or an awful lot that used to be in, say, the Yellow Pages business, where they're trying to replace that kind of monthly annuity that a Yellow Page ad brought in with monthly SEO services. But I agree with you, Chad, that you should be able to optimize it once and then on a periodic basis review it, continue to review it, and then when the signals indicate, make adjustments. Is that kind of what you're advising your clients?
that's definitely one approach, absolutely, right? It's according to how much content you put out, how complex your website is.
Yeah.
It's one of those, not easy answers again, I guess, but in general, the vast majority of cases, you don't need to pay someone month after month to do SEO for you, right?
That brings us to another question when you're talking about what should we be leaving to the experts. What about building your own website? It's pretty simple to, WordPress, for example, offers a pretty simple website. Is that a good idea for people to take that on themselves, or should they be going to someone with, more expertise in the area?
I develop a lot. I actually spend most of my time working on working on websites these days. And my answer to that is, how successful do you want to be, right? Because sure, you can go in there. I mean, there's no end to the services out there where you can build your own website and build your own app and do all these things.
Yeah.
Rarely does it ever look professional, right? To you it may, because you're excited about it that you were able to create this thing, and I've been there. I've been there, and I know that feeling of, oh wow, look at this the site I just made, but to people who external people, it's not always going to look the same, right? So I think there's definitely a quality, often can be a quality issue in terms of the look and feel and how professional it looks and how it works, even if it works. So I would say at the if you're not really good with that sort of thing, then you should get someone to do it for you.
Okay.
When we talk about developing websites and so forth, there's as smartphones and tablets and so forth have emerged, and I think I've heard that as much as 40+% of online activity occurs through a smartphone or a tablet, and then you get into this whole idea of responsive design. So could you address the need for a responsive website, and for people who may not be aware of that, if you could explain what responsive is and then kind of talk about why you do or don't need that with respect to your website?
Okay. Responsive design basically speaks to having a website that adjusts to screen size. So the content will actually shift, and it will present versus a traditional website that if you view it on your phone or tablet, it's very tiny, because what it does is it kind of zooms in. That's not responsive. Responsive would give you a really great looking site that's formatted for the screen size, and this all happens automatically with responsive design. And I would say that you absolutely should have a responsive website. Everything, as you mentioned, is moving towards multi-screen. It's not even moving towards it. We are there, right? You'll be sitting on the couch and you're browsing on a laptop, and on your other hand you have a tablet, and then your phone is over next to you, and then you're watching something. You're browsing on your smart TV. Yeah. That's where we're at. So your website, it should look great on any screen. And Google has indicated pretty strongly that they look for that, right? So if your competitors, say you're in a school of 10 competitors, and you're the only one who doesn't have a responsive website, that's kind of sending a message to Google that you're just not as serious as everyone else, right? And then too, when people shop online or when they do research online, typically they don't go to one site. So once again, if you're a plumbing company, they may go to 5 or 6 different plumbing websites, and if yours is the only one that they can't read on their phone, or they have to try to zoom in, and it's kind of not a great experience, what's that saying about you, right? To me, that says, well, you're not as serious as the other guy. So I would say, by all means, get a responsive website, right?
So it really again comes down to really knowing who knowing how your potential viewers are consuming the information. Not only what they want to consume, but where they're consuming it. So kind of comes down to knowing who you're dealing with, who your customer is, and how they approach this kind of whole digital information pool. So
absolutely, and you can assume that, like you said, 40%. You should assume that a lot of your traffic is going. A lot of your consumption of your content is going to be done on some sort of tablet or smartphone, right? And you can get that data as well if you have something like Google Analytics installed on your website, which you should. You can see where where your content's being viewed, on what sort of screen, what sort of resolution, even. There's a lot of data you can get that tells you exactly how your content's being consumed, and it's going to tell you that you should have a responsive site, and that's what it's going to, more or less, that's what it's going to say, right?
And by the way, and I know I'm getting into putting my geek hat on, Susan. I'm sorry about that, but
that's okay.
We've talked about WordPress and its kind of desirability as a platform, but there are any number of good plugins that work within WordPress that for straightforward sites can make the transition, creating a responsive design very easy. And there are a lot of themes that give you the look and feel of the website that also are labeled as responsive, and they make the transition for you. So it doesn't necessarily involve an additional layer of overhead or development. It doesn't have to be a big money outlay with respect to that, or that difficult. So that's something to talk to your developer about.
Absolutely.
Chad, if people can only engage in one form of online advertising, what would you recommend?
Well, I'll tell you what one of the most effective newer tactics is, and it's remarketing. Remarketing is pretty exciting, and it's your conversion rates are just pretty good with it, right? If you do it properly. Remarketing is pretty much a system where when someone visits your site, say you're Amazon.ca or Amazon.com, right, and you're looking at I don't know, crayons, right, for your toddler. If you go somewhere else and you go to a site that's within the remarketing network for whatever system Amazon uses, you're going to see other ads for crayons. This is assuming that you didn't go through the whole process and buy crayons. If it's done properly, if you bought crayons, you won't see more ads for crayons.
You'll see coloring books.
Yeah.
You'll see complementary items, right? And that's when it's done properly. But it's not always done properly, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But say you went on Amazon and you browsed and you looked at 4 different boxes of crayons and you left, and before you left, you put one in your shopping cart. What Amazon may do is they'll serve an ad to you that gives you a discount or a coupon or just the invitation to come back, right, and repurchase those crayons. And there's so many good things about that in terms of producing conversions and sales that I think it's super exciting, right? And it has been working very, very well for mostly larger companies. I haven't seen very many smaller businesses getting into remarketing yet. There's a bit of a setup, but it's not, it's not that bad. If you can get into it and it does fit your business model, it's effective. Like, it really works well. Yeah. If you can't, I would say AdWords is a good choice. I've been using AdWords for 2006, so going on, quite some time now. I've had clients who get fantastic results with it. If you're in certain industries, it can be prohibitively expensive, right? Say you're in real estate, or you're a lawyer, you have a law firm. Insurance is going to be very expensive to do AdWords, but it could pay off, right? It definitely could pay off. It's one of those things where you have to look at return on investment, and you're not going to know until you do it. If you're in a very specialized industry and you don't have tons of competition, or you have competition but they're not on AdWords, it can be quite affordable, right? So I would say first choice would be get remarketing. Second choice would probably be the AdWords. Third choice, stuff on Facebook. Right. That can be very inexpensive, especially if you have a built-in audience that you've already got together via like a likes campaign. That might be beyond the scope of this conversation, but it can be fairly effective, right? But I would say that's the third choice. Right.
Excellent.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Facebook is that it gives you can really drill down. You can get to high degree of granularity with the audience that you select to see your ads.
It's amazing. So. Yeah, it's you can yeah, you can find anything on Facebook, right? You can even have it basically copy an audience based on a database that you import, and it'll find people who are similar to what you've imported. So I think their backend is just amazing, right?
Right. Excellent. And then, if you could only give one piece of advice, Chad, to small businesses, business owners, in terms of how to become more successful with their content marketing, what would that be? What do you recommend?
I would say find and segment and just fully understand an audience that is going to be interested in what you have to sell or offer, and find out how you can please them consistently over and over again. So that's the most effective strategy possible, right? It's a whole tribe thing, right?
Yeah. Who's your tribe, right? I think that's great advice, and Susan and I give that to our clients. Find the audience. And in fact, we've been having discussions recently about really refining our audience just based on that. You have to find, I think, as you described it, find your tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Niche. Your niche.
Niche.
Yeah, so I guess we've come to the end of our time together, Chad. Thank you so much. We highly encourage people to contact you. What's the best way, if people would like to work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch and find out more?
Email. Email is always the best way for me.
Okay, and the email address is?
info@gtaconsultant.com.
Excellent. And again, the website is www.gtaconsultant.com. And we really highly recommend Chad. He, as you can see, he knows an awful lot about what he's doing. And thank you again very much, Chad, for sharing your wisdom and insights with us. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
It was really a pleasure, Chad. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.